In 1912, an aspiring young paleontologist named Arthur Jenkins signed on for a routine geological survey of the salt formations in western Oklahoma. His notes from the first 3 weeks were meticulous and entirely unremarkable, until an entry from early May simply read, "The mine foreman swears he hit bone 700 feet down. I saw it myself. Not rock, not animal known to science." This wasn't a casual observation. Jenkins, still in his early 20s, but already possessing a keen eye for stratigraphy, was engaged in what was, by all accounts, a rather monotonous task, mapping the gypsum and halite layers within the vast Permian-era deposits near what is now Harmon County. His meticulous logs, preserved in the dusty archives of the State Geological Survey, detail typical mineralogical compositions, fault lines, and very little else. The work was predictable, the subterranean landscape familiar to geologists of the period, until that single, jarring entry. 700 feet below the arid surface, in a realm of compressed primeval ocean and mineralized earth, the foreman's pickaxe had encountered something utterly foreign. The depth itself was a critical detail. 700 feet down, within geological strata dating back some 250 million years, to find any recognizable organic matter at such a profound depth and age would be extraordinary enough. The petrification process alone typically obliterates fine biological structure. But to find something described in Jenkins's precise scientific hand as bone, and then immediately qualified with "not animal known to science," elevated the discovery from an anomaly to an outright impossibility. One must consider the geological context. These salt formations are not known for their fossil richness in terms of complex life forms. Microfossils, yes. Brine shrimp vestiges, perhaps. But bone, a structured, skeletal fragment clearly differentiated from the enclosing rock. It defied every tenet of paleontology and geology known at the time, and indeed, much of what we accept today. It was, as Jenkins would later imply in more guarded language, an object out of time, out of place, an anachronism entombed within the very bedrock of the continent. The initial survey, intended to provide data for salt extraction, had stumbled upon a riddle far more profound than any mineralogical puzzle. This placed Arthur Jenkins, then a young, ambitious geologist, barely 5 years out of his doctoral program, in an unenviable position. His early career had been marked by meticulous attention to detail, evidenced in his regional surveys of hydrocarbon deposits, work that required not only keen observational skills, but also an unwavering commitment to empirical data. He was known for his rigorous stratigraphic analyses, his ability to discern subtle shifts in sedimentary layers, and his scrupulous record-keeping. His field notebooks, filled with precise sketches and exhaustive lithological descriptions, were legendary among his peers. The Oklahoma salt mine assignment itself was, for Jenkins, a relatively routine project, a geological survey to assess structural integrity and potential new veins for extraction. He'd meticulously mapped subterranean fault lines, documented anhydrite interbeds, and charted brine pockets. His professional reputation rested on his scientific exactitude. He did not embellish. He did not speculate. His initial reports, before this discovery, were models of conservative, fact-based geological assessment. This particular salt dome, a relic of ancient inland seas, had presented a unique challenge simply due to its sheer scale and the intricate folding of its evaporite layers. Jenkins had brought in a junior paleontologist, Dr. Eleanor Vance, primarily to analyze microfossils, conodonts, and nanofossils that could provide more precise dating markers for the various halite and gypsum strata. Her task was to establish a detailed biostratigraphic column, a standard procedure. Neither expected to encounter anything larger than a fragment of planktonic life, certainly nothing macroscopic, and emphatically nothing resembling a bone structure, let alone one that defied easy classification. Jenkins' initial notes detailed the exact coordinates of the discovery. Section Gamma 7, level A4, approximately 93 meters from primary shaft, embedded within Upper Permian Elk City sandstone equivalent, directly adjacent to a significant halite intrusion. The description of the object itself is strikingly dispassionate, almost clinically detached. Dense, calcified material, exhibiting distinct cortical and trabecular structure consistent with vertebrate osteology. However, morphological characteristics divergent from any known terrestrial or aquatic fauna. Proportionality alien. This was not the excited speculative language of a man seeking fame, but the careful, almost reluctant observation of a scientist confronted with an undeniable yet inexplicable datum. It was a problem, a profound scientific enigma that directly challenged his extensive training, his understanding of Earth's biological history, and the very foundations of paleontology. His initial impulse, as recorded in his confidential memos, was to seek immediate consultation with experts in comparative anatomy and anomalous fossil forms. This was a man of science, confronted with an impossible truth, seeking an explanation within the established framework of knowledge. His later actions, or rather his subsequent silence, become all the more critical when viewed against this background of initial scientific rigor and transparent intent. But the problem, the truly profound dilemma, lay deeper than mere morphological anomaly. It began, as so many such problems do, with the bedrock of geological time. The Oklahoma salt plains are a testament to what geologists call deep time, an immense chronological canvas stretching back hundreds of millions of years. These aren't just salt deposits. They are exquisitely preserved stratigraphic records, each laminar layer a frozen echo of an ancient environment. Formed during the Permian period, approximately 250 million years ago, these vast evaporite basins emerged from the desiccation of prehistoric inland seas. As the water retreated, leaving behind hypersaline brines, minerals crystallized layer upon layer over geological epochs. Sodium chloride, gypsum, and hydrite. Their deposition faithfully recorded the subtle shifts in climate, sea level, and tectonic activity. The specific formation in question, the one yielding the anomalous osteological material, was identified as part of the Wellington Formation Complex, a lower Permian deposit. This places the material firmly within a geological stratum dated with remarkable precision through radiometric and biostratigraphic methods to between approximately 270 million and 290 million years ago. At a depth of 700 feet, the context is undeniable. These deposits are not recent, not Quaternary, not even Cenozoic. They are ancient, truly ancient. Now, let us consider the established timeline of vertebrate evolution. The Permian period predates the rise of dinosaurs. It predates the emergence of mammals as we know them. It significantly predates the advent of birds, or indeed any complex terrestrial vertebrates exhibiting the specific cortical and trabecular structures described in Dr. Schmidt's initial assessment. The earliest known hominid ancestors appear in the fossil record a mere 6 to 7 million years ago. Mammalian diversification, leading to the forms recognizable today, began after the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, some 66 million years ago. Even the most ancient reptilian forms, though present in the Permian, bore no anatomical resemblance to the description. Finding bone material, any bone material, suggestive of a highly evolved vertebrate at 700 feet within a Permian salt bed is, by all accepted models of paleontology and evolutionary biology, an archaeological and paleontological impossibility. The accepted timeline, built upon centuries of rigorous scientific inquiry, places the emergence of complex, large-brained vertebrates with such highly differentiated bone structures many, many millions of years later. The physical evidence exhumed from the Wellington Formation unequivocally contradicts this established narrative. It's not merely an unusual fossil. It's an anachronism on a scale that forces a re-evaluation of fundamental assumptions. The discrepancy isn't trivial. It's a conceptual chasm between what we believe we know about Earth's biological history and what the Earth physically yields. This is the profound problem Dr. Schmidt faced, not just an oddity, but a direct material challenge to the entire edifice of stratigraphy, paleontology, and the evolutionary continuum. It forced a choice. Either the universally accepted geological timescale was fundamentally flawed, or the osteological material represented a form of life utterly unknown, defying classification and challenging the very definition of terrestrial biology as understood. So, when Dr. Schmidt presented his findings to the Geological Survey and various academic institutions, the response was not one of excited scientific discourse, but rather a chillingly concerted campaign of suppression. Jenkins, remember, was a meticulous man, his field notes comprehensive, his sample preservation exemplary. He had not merely discovered anomalous bones, he had presented a compelling case, supported by rigorous methodology, that these ossified remains were demonstrably not of any known terrestrial origin, and their stratigraphic placement was utterly improbable. Initially, a small, controlled group of paleontologists and geologists were dispatched. Their official reports, however, curiously minimized the abnormalities, reclassifying the larger bone fragments as ambiguous geological formations, and the smaller, more articulated pieces as unidentified avian or reptilian bone fragments, carefully avoiding any mention of the highly unusual internal structures and material characteristics Jenkins had so painstakingly documented. The immediate aftermath saw a slow, insidious erosion of Jenkins' professional standing. Funding for his ongoing research projects was abruptly cut. Invitations to speak at conferences, previously frequent, ceased entirely. His own university, under pressure, quietly began disassociating itself from his more controversial claims, rebranding his work on the Wellington Formation as speculative and unverified. Then came the more direct interventions. Several boxes containing Jenkins' original, highly unusual notes and, crucially, a select number of his most compelling anatomical samples, those exhibiting the most baffling structural anomalies, mysteriously vanished during a supposedly routine transfer to a secure archival facility. The official explanation was a clerical error, a misfiling. Yet, anyone familiar with the meticulous record-keeping of scientific institutions understood the implausibility of such a broad, simultaneous disappearance of irreplaceable data. Further analyses, conducted by independent researchers attempting to corroborate Jenkins' initial findings, were met with an impenetrable wall of bureaucratic obstruction. Permits for excavation were denied, access to existing collections was restricted, and even requests for high-resolution imaging of the officially recognized, unidentified fragments were repeatedly put off or outright rejected. The motivation behind this systematic obfuscation is multi-layered, yet clear in its effect: to bury a truth inconvenient to established paradigms. One primary motive was undoubtedly the protection of the existing scientific framework. The implication that Earth's early geological epochs harbored complex, non-human, anachronistic life forms threatens to dismantle centuries of accepted evolutionary theory and paleontological classification. It compels a fundamental reevaluation of not just specific timelines, but the very mechanisms of life's emergence and diversification. Such a challenge is not merely intellectual, it can be deeply unsettling to an entire intellectual superstructure. There were also significant economic interests at play. The Oklahoma salt mines, a colossal industry, represented substantial investment and employment. The notion that these commercially viable strata contained biological material that could not be explained, material hinting at a history far more complex and perhaps even alien than understood, could trigger public anxiety, environmental concerns, or even land disputes, thereby jeopardizing the entire operation. Financial stability in some cases supersedes scientific integrity. But beneath these readily apparent reasons, one must consider a deeper, more unsettling possibility: the protection of something far grander and more profound. What if the implications of Jenkins' discovery extended beyond mere scientific paradigm shifts or economic concerns? What if the unusual notes that vanished spoke not just of strange osteology, but of contextual details, geological associations, or even subtle indications of intelligence that officialdom found truly untenable for public consumption? The official reports, when finally released years later, were sanitized, the problematic data points either removed entirely or subtly reinterpreted to fit within accepted understanding. The complex biomineralization patterns Jenkins observed were described as unusual mineral crystallization. The highly ordered skeletal components became geological curiosities. Every element that truly challenged the status quo was systematically minimized, altered, or simply omitted, leaving a narrative that was seamless, unchallenging, and utterly devoid of the astonishing truth. A truth that, had it been allowed to surface, would have dramatically reshaped our understanding of life itself. The question remains: why such extreme measures for mere bones? And what precisely was so terrifying about them? The shadows of Jenkins' buried findings stretch further than the Oklahoma salt beds. They merge with other disquieting whispers from the deep, forgotten murmurs from excavations across the globe. Consider the baffling reports emerging from the ancient diamond mines of Kimberley, South Africa, in the late 19th century. Accounts, often dismissed as folklore or misidentification, describing intricately shaped metallic spheres, some deeply embedded within strata conservatively dated to over 2.5 billion years old. These enigmatic artifacts, often referred to as Klerksdorp spheres, bear grooved patterns inconsistent with natural geological processes, their precise geometry defying known Precambrian paleontology. Geologists, even today, struggle to reconcile their existence with conventional models of early Earth life and industry. Were these isolated curiosities, or fragments of a far older, unknown technological presence pushed back into the depths by seismic upheaval and geological time? Then there are the scattered, often hushed accounts from the deep coal seams of Pennsylvania and Appalachia. Miners, working veins laid down millions of years ago, occasionally unearthed anomalous objects, delicate chains of an unknown alloy, ceramic fragments bearing unusual glyphs, and even what were described as miniature, perfectly formed implements entombed within solid coal. These findings, when they weren't immediately reburied or dismissed as pranks, often vanished into private collections or obscure regional museums, effectively erasing them from the mainstream scientific discourse. The common thread, strikingly similar to Jenkins's experience, is the swift and thorough suppression, the systemic erasure of inconvenient truths from the official record, invariably framed as misidentification or fanciful error. Even in relatively modern contexts, subterranean phenomena defy easy categorization. Deep-sea drilling projects have, on occasion, reported recovering drill cores containing utterly anomalous organic residues at depths and in geological formations where organic matter of any advanced form should simply not exist. Tantalizing vestiges, often documented with ambiguous terms like unusual filamentous structures, before being, quite literally, put under wraps in specialized, unpublicized research facilities. These are not headline-grabbing discoveries, but consistent, low-frequency anomalies that, when aggregated, paint a picture of a subterranean world far more complex and perhaps inhabited than our surface-centric human narrative allows. Professor Jenkins, it seems, stumbled upon a grander conspiracy of silence, a pattern of systemic obfuscation that transcends national borders and specific geological formations. His findings in rural Oklahoma, far from being unique, may merely represent one of the clearest, most incontrovertible pieces of evidence in a much larger puzzle. A puzzle deliberately dismembered and buried by those who would prefer the profound implications of deep time and unknown civilizations to remain undisturbed and undiscovered. The question then ceases to be merely about the nature of the anomalous bones and expands to encompass the global apparatus that ensures such discoveries are never allowed a full, unvarnished airing. What collective understanding are we truly being protected from? And at what cost? What then does it signify if the bedrock narratives of our planet's deep past, of the very genesis and evolution of life, are founded upon an incomplete, perhaps even intentionally distorted, understanding? If the vestiges of inexplicable organisms, the stratified echoes of advanced, pre-human civilizations lie entombed beneath layers of bureaucratic suppression and academic inertia? Jenkins's act, born of a geologist's precise observation and an ethicist's quiet despair, was a desperate attempt to preserve a truth deemed too disruptive for contemporary consumption. His carefully orchestrated burial was not an act of concealment, but an act of stewardship, a silent plea to a future more capable, perhaps, of confronting what lies beyond the established parameters of acceptable knowledge. The ramifications extend far beyond the immediate scientific quandary of anomalous osteological remains. They touch upon the very structure of human inquiry, the mechanisms of information control, and the inherent fragility of any received history. If such irrefutable evidence, witnessed by multiple trained professionals, could be systematically neutralized, what other profound discoveries, what other fundamental challenges to our collective self-perception languish in forgotten archives or lie unremarked beneath our feet? The salt mines of Oklahoma, far from being a singular anomaly, may well be a microcosm, a subterranean testament to a much grander, a much more pervasive pattern of strategic amnesia. We are left to ponder the vast, shadowed spaces within our understanding of existence, not merely as gaps in knowledge, but as deliberately excavated voids designed to maintain an illusion of order. The question then becomes not just what secrets the Earth holds, but what secrets we, as a species, are prevented from discovering. If you're tired of history's blank pages, subscribe and join us next week for another investigation into the past that was never meant to be found.